It has been over 1 year in Puerto Rico now. 1 year and 2 months. 3 months?
Yeah. Well, we're into the third month.
Yeah, I guess so. And we thought we should do an update because a lot of people said we were crazy and we were going to hate it and we would move back in 6 months or in 1 year.
All valid questions.
Yeah, exactly. So in this video, we're just going to go through what it's been like the last year. I don't know where we should begin. I mean, do you want to talk about what you thought it would be like and what it has become living down here in Puerto Rico?
I guess I really had no expectations other than I thought it would be like vacation because I've been to other Caribbean islands,
Yep.
you know, and it certainly has felt like that. But I think because we live in Palmas del Mar, which is a community, there is much more of a community feel than I ever would have anticipated.
Yeah, I think I expected more ocean and boating lifestyle. And then when we moved down here, at least on our side of the island,
The waters are very rough.
very rough. So you need a very big boat to go out 95% of the time. So we were planning on buying a boat and we just decided, man,
Because the marina here has a lot of empty slips, and so we thought,
it's like all empty.
We'll buy jet skis and we'll go out all the time. But what we found over the last year is there's probably like 20 days out of the year where it's crystal, you know, it's like perfectly smooth.
Yeah.
And you could take any boat out there, but if you don't own the jet ski, then it's impossible to go out there. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a waste to have only 20 days to use the boat.
So that might be kind of the biggest difference to me. I just expected, like, we're going to be out on the water, we're going to be scuba diving, snorkeling all the time.
We were probably on the water more in Charleston than we are here.
I think we were. Now, we are currently in talks with a few other people in the neighborhood, and we might be buying a large boat soon as a group so that we can go out more often. But it's just not quite as casual as we thought it would be. I think if you're on other parts of the island, it can be that casual. In Fajardo, they're blocked by a bunch of islands up there, so you can get away with a much smaller boat.
But we went jet skiing there our first couple months living here, and it was pretty rough out there. So
I know, but it's nothing like we're used to boating in the harbor and stuff.
Right,
so
right.
That was probably the biggest negative because I was very excited to like live the Caribbean lifestyle and be out on the water all the time, and I've been out on a boat like 4 times in the last 12 months.
That being said, though, I feel like we've been snorkeling quite a bit. So there's a lot of beaches and little hikes and private beaches and stuff. And, you know, I've always rented that gear. I think I had like a snorkel and glasses, but I've decided to get the flippers, and I'm now thinking, like, should we get scuba gear? I mean, everything's right there if you want to take advantage of it.
Once again, though, it has everything to do with the weather here. I was expecting there to be crystal clear water all the time right outside here, and that's just not the case. If there's any wind, then there's going to be waves, and when there's waves, it chops everything up and you lose visibility. So each morning when we wake up, we can see the ocean outside of our house, and we can tell just by how calm it is if we can go out and snorkel and stuff.
But waves and wind are good for kiteboarding. So do you feel like you've done more kiteboarding or less kiteboarding than you did in Charleston, or is it more seasonal?
So kiteboarding is like my favorite thing to do, and once again, I was super excited that like I can just bike or ride the golf cart and go kiteboarding. And kiteboarding can be great here, but the wind is not as consistent as where we're from, Charleston, South Carolina, and so I have kiteboarded significantly less here, even though it's like right by my house where I can do it. So that's probably all the water sports have been a little bit of a negative for me, just because I expected there to be more ocean since we were right next to it, but it's just not quite as simple as we expected. That could change, though. If we end up buying this boat with the other families in this neighborhood, then we'll have a big boat. And then that opens up a lot of opportunities because there's so many incredible islands. There's Vieques, and then there's the British Virgin Islands and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And this boat, in theory, will be big enough to go explore all of those islands.
But we still won't be like wakeboarding like we used to necessarily.
No, it's a totally different style of boating. If you're accustomed to calm water boating and inlets and
lakes and stuff,
it's
not
like that here. But we were just on the west side of the island in Rican and everything, and it is like a lake over there. It's also like a lake on the south side of the island.
Yeah. So I think that's the coolest thing we've done recently is head to the West Coast, and it's taken us a full year to actually go explore that. Whereas many people that move to Puerto Rico, that's the first place they go because they consider moving to Rincon.
Yeah.
So I know I have opinions about the West Coast. What did you think?
I thought it was super cool. Kind of this hippie lifestyle.
Definitely a different culture.
Yeah, going on out there. What I really appreciated out there was they had lots of really nice shops and restaurants and everything. Just stuff going on. I know they had this like food truck park area we went to at night, and they had, I don't know, 8 or 10 food trucks and a band playing and
we saw
drinks
so
and
much
stuff.
live music everywhere we went. It seems like there was like a acoustic trio or something, or a full-blown electric band. We don't get to see that as much here in Palmas.
Yeah, I mean, our neighborhood's cool. We have a bunch of restaurants and stuff in our neighborhood, but in Humacao, the city in which we reside, it's
kind
like
of dead at night.
there's a Chili's, there's a Ponderosa. It's not like
Fine
cool
dining,
nightlife or anything like that.
I don't think I've gone out once at night and gotten into anything
Yeah.
outside of Palmas.
Walmart. You go to Walmart at night, and like
The lines
when
are
the
very
crowds are low.
That's the time to go.
So,
Also, the natural beauty though on the West Coast. I mean,
absolutely,
there are some cliffs, and we were there in Rican, but there was no major waves. But the waves that you see in some of the pictures, it's the only major surfable area on the island.
There's world-class surfing on the opposite side of the island from where we live. So
Yeah.
there's almost no surfing here.
Yeah.
And then world-class waves on that side. What I've really enjoyed about Puerto Rico is how different each little town and city can be in terms of, what's actually going on in the cities, but also the nature.
Right.
You've got the caves, and you've got the cliffs, and you've got the deserts, and you've got the mountains and the rainforest. There's just something completely different within like a 30 or 45-minute drive of wherever you are.
Yeah, I mean, we're from the South. At least we've been there for the last like 20 or 30 years of our lives.
Yeah.
And everywhere you go, it's just kind of like the same trees, and there's a beach.
Yeah.
And maybe you can go to, some mountains, but it's always a 5-hour drive.
Yeah.
To be able to find so much diversity here is pretty cool and unique.
So let's talk a little bit about the technical side of things. I mean, when we first moved down here, we knew nothing about everything. When it comes to like getting a bank account, and how do you do your taxes, and how do you, like, there's so many taxes in the States are such a pain in the butt anyway, in
Right.
dealing with each little jurisdiction and sales tax and this permit and that. It's a nightmare in the States, but here it is more complicated.
It's more of a nightmare?
I think I would say it's more of a nightmare. There's a strange attitude here, which is like, no one really knows what's going on, but they also act like it's just not a big deal if you don't do it right.
Yeah.
Something that we're struggling with right now is we obviously work from home, like a lot of times we just need a computer. And so legally we have to have our home inspected to be a home office, and we have to get it approved by like the fire marshal, and then this official and that official, and we have to pay all these people to come out. And it's such a nightmare that there is now a job.
Like a service, a concierge.
Yeah, who the guy will just kind of like expedite
That process.
the process. But he charges more than all of the taxes and fees for the whole process.
Yeah.
And when you ask people, like, well, what's the law say about this? They'll say, it says this. And then you'll go, well, I just talked to this person on the phone, and they told me that. And they'll go, or that, or you could do that.
Yeah.
And so at times, I'm very nervous. Like, I want to do everything correctly by the books, because if you mess up in the States with something,
penalties,
oh
and
my
it's-
gosh, interest, and
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
we're adding on fees because you missed 1 month of doing, But here, everyone's attitude is just like, do it, and if you don't want to, it's no problem.
Yeah. It's just much more complicated, and maybe the biggest reason is the language barrier. It's the fact that we can't just ask the right questions in Spanish and get an answer back.
I don't think it is that at all.
No?
I mean, I in every situation, I can't say every situation, but in the vast majority of situations where we have had trouble at the bank, at the DMV, with any of these permits, the person I'm speaking with speaks English perfectly, and obviously my Spanish is horrific. We're having no problem communicating, but they
Right.
tell me something, I go to the next person and do what that person told me, and the second person says that's wrong. You should have done it like this. Now you have to redo it again. Now you have to buy the golden tickets all over again. I mean, one of the issues that we've run into, and that we're about to run into again, is we shipped our cars down here, and we had to, get license plates for the cars like you would in the States or whatever. But instead of just paying money right there because you've already waited in line, you have to go to this other building across town and get these, I call them golden tickets. I don't know what the heck it is.
They're like taxes for insurance or something.
But you have to do it in this other building. And when you do it and you get the wrong amount of golden tickets, and then you drive all the way across town to give the person the golden tickets, and they say, you're off by $1. And then you go back across town again, and they go, oh, we can't add $1. We have to sell you $152 of new golden tickets. And, it's
This goes back to my point, though, in the U.S., you just go to a DMV, and they handle everything. If you have to do a written test, it's there at the DMV.
Right.
If you have to have your eyes examined because you wear contacts, it's there in the DMV. If you lost the little sticker that you put on the back of your license plate, it's there at the DMV. Whereas here, it feels like it's in all of these different offices and buildings, and you're running across town. It's just not very organized, and I've always complained in the States that everything is still not connected as well as it should be with computers.
No, it should be all online.
But yeah, you should be able to go and pay everything online, but even with Charleston, there's been times where their online system is kind of a joke. So I feel like Puerto Rico is just a little further behind that.
It's a lot further behind that.
Okay.
It's a lot further behind that.
It just depends on where you live in the U.S., though. Like, some systems might be great, some might be horrible. Puerto Rico is probably worse.
Usually when you go, there's still the joke in the United States, when you go to the DMV, it's going to be a nightmare. And, you're going to go to get a license, and they're going to go, well, you have to have a cable bill in your name. And you go, I don't have cable. And they go, well, then you can't have a license in this state. Or, just crazy stuff that doesn't make any sense.
But it's consistent. Here in Puerto Rico, you might need the cable bill, but the day that you go, they don't even ask for the cable bill. And you're like, why did I have all of this when I didn't even need it?
Well, what happened with your fiance?
So Kristen went to get her license, and they said when we got there, we had all the paperwork, and they said, have you taken the drug test? And I'm like, are you kidding me? We just waited all this time, and it's an hour into it, and she needs a drug test.
Yeah.
And I was about to leave. I was pissed off. I was in a bad mood. And then the guy next to me, who's also getting a license, said, oh, it's not really a drug test. It's just paperwork that says all of the drinking and driving laws in Puerto Rico, and all you have to do is have it, and that is the test. And so I thought we were going to have to leave because the girl behind the counter made it sound like we didn't complete the drug test, when really we just had to go around the corner, get the pamphlet, and then she got the ID.
They literally handed you some papers.
And that's
the drug test.
Right, but we very easily could have left that day and then had to reschedule the next visit because we didn't have something that I didn't even have to have, 8 months earlier.
Right. And then what happened with the license that she got after that?
So then she turns in her Massachusetts license, and there's this thing in the United States called a real ID. It's got a little star on it. Relatively new, but she had that in Massachusetts. So when you hand over your ID, you must turn it in to get the Puerto Rican ID. They didn't give her a real ID. And so we leave, and thank goodness she looked at it, because I would have never looked at mine. But she looked at it and said, where's the star? And then she reads the back, and it's like, this is not a federally accepted license. It's more or less like an ID card, but it's not. Maybe she could drive with it, but if she went through TSA, they would not have accepted it. Thank goodness she caught that. We went right back, and of course, there's another fee and ticket. You have to go to this other building.
You had to get more golden tickets.
We had to pay $22 in this other building and then come back, and it was just a nightmare. But her experience was very different than my experience, and my experience is probably different than somebody's experience who's moving here right now. So it's just very hard to come up with a systematic approach when things always seem to be changing.
And everybody has a different opinion of what you're supposed to do. I have my electric car here, and I waited in line for hours at the DMV. It's not called the DMV, but whatever it is here. And the lady told me that I had to have an emissions test. Yeah. And I said, my car does not produce emissions. And she said, you must have the emissions test.
Yeah.
So I then drive and wait in line at the emissions testing facility. And then the guy's like, why are you here? You don't have a tailpipe. I can't put this, tester in anything. You don't have a tailpipe. And I'm like, I know, just give me the effing piece of paper. So he did. He charged me for a test that he did not do. And then I come back and I hand her the test, and she's like, good, now you're ready.
Yeah.
It's so silly. And
And it's funny because I've never lived in a state where they require the emissions test, even in the United States.
yeah.
But I'm sure if you have to deal with this, you also drive around. The difference with Puerto Rico is it's an island. But you drive around and you see other cars that are just polluting like crazy. And you're like, how did they pass this test? Or their whole front, I joke that like 10% of all cars in Puerto Rico, all the front bumper is ripped off. And I'm like, how did they pass the safety inspection? But it's this little dog and pony show that you have to do and produce all the stuff. And so maybe that is just, to wrap all this up, it's just island life. And that's something that's very common in many other places. And it's new to us, but it's definitely frustrating. And I'm excited now because we're a year into it, and I think renewing all of these tags and licenses and stuff will be much easier now that we've done it the first time. But the idea of going back a year ago and having to deal with all that, it's the thing that gives me nightmares.
Yeah, I know we're kind of on a negative kick. Don't worry, we're going to talk about some positives coming up. But while it's fresh on my mind, what about the banking here?
Ooh, the banking. So unlike the United States, we have 3 or 4 banking options, with the most popular being Banco Popular. And in the United States, they'll just issue anyone a bank account, right? But in many cases, if you want a credit card or you want a bank, here in Puerto Rico, it makes it much more difficult. So you can't just get Wells Fargo, although I hear they're coming here.
Yes.
You can't do Bank of America. Like a lot of the banks that you might have in the States will not necessarily open an account here on the island. And so it just makes banking more difficult because you have to use a bank like Banco Popular.
Yes.
And then today we wanted to do a very simple task. We simply wanted to exchange money from our bank in Puerto Rico to an investment bank that we have. And
what you would normally do is you would just link them up online.
Yep.
Like with our Bank of America accounts, we simply link Fidelity to Bank of America, and we can transfer money one time or monthly automatically. It's very, very simple. But because we're in Puerto Rico, Fidelity is like, nope, we're not linking to that bank. And if you want to link to the bank, it's going to take 2 weeks, and you have to do paperwork with certified letters. It's just a nightmare.
So the solution was to just wire the money,
Yeah.
which comes with a fee. But we thought, oh, this is easy. Here's the bank numbers, and here's our bank numbers. We'll just go to the bank and wire money. We've done that many times in our lives. Wasn't so simple.
Yeah, I don't know how long we were there. Was
I
it?
think we were there for over an hour.
But we did get the money wired out. Now, the money has yet to show up in our Fidelity accounts.
Tomorrow
Maybe we've lost tons of money. We'll have to wait and see. But it worked. Like, everything's slow, but it worked, hopefully. The problem is that with other banking issues, we have just found that it does not work. For example, we tried to create a business bank account down here, and we were paying a bunch of private contractors who are in the United States and around the world. And Bank of America, you simply can go on your phone or on a computer and just type in somebody's name, type in their bank account information, and it will just send money to them
Instantly, or you can have a check every 2 weeks.
It's so easy.
It's very simple.
Here, they were like, you have to pay for this corporate account, which is a bunch of money, and then we're going to send you this digital key generator fob thing.
Authenticator.
Yeah, it's like I'm fucking James Bond or something, and I have to keep this with me at all times, and anytime I want to send someone money, I must use this key generator to like verify the thing, which this is insane because like you need to send money to people, I need to send money to people, David back in the States needs to send money to people.
Yeah, you need 5 of these fobs.
So now we're buying multiple fobs and like mailing them around the world to get people to just be able to pay people.
And if you use Facebook or you have crypto or, they have the authenticators on the phone. Yes. We could just use the Google authenticator, but no. We must buy this proprietary device that is probably 15 years old.
So we go through this whole process. We're buying all these authenticators. We're shipping them around. And then we're going back into the bank and we're like, okay, we have the key generators. Teach us how to do this now. And the people at the bank are like, we don't know how. You have to call this number.
And get a rep from the bank.
Yeah, the James Bond professional is going to teach you how to hack into the key generator to send someone $25. And so we told David, who pays most of our people, like, you call these people and you deal with it. He was on the phone with them for days, hours and hours. And one of the issues we ran into were some of the people in other countries, their routing number or account numbers on their bank account had more
Just numbers
characters than the slots would allow on Banco's website.
Right.
I mean, this sounds like something like out of 1992 or something, but she'd type in 7 characters and it wouldn't allow 9.
Yeah.
And the experts on the phone were like, oh, you just can't send that person money. So we've spent hundreds of dollars on all these key generators and the monthly fees to be able to do this. I'm not sure we ever sent a single payment through this account. And I think 9 or 10 months went by, and I went back into the bank, and they were like, oh, how's the system working? I'm like, it's never worked. And now that you mention it,
we need to
cancel this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sure I can't, but can I get my money back? Because we haven't used it a single time, and it literally didn't work. And they asked me, like, why didn't it work? And I explained the situation, and they were like, oh, you just don't put in the first 3 digits, and you put in so that the last
6,
digits
yeah.
fit. And I'm like, the expert told us that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So what do you want from us?
My experience with this, to wrap all of this up, is just that everyone here has a solution for all of these little problems.
Yeah.
And it's like you just need to move large amounts of money out of your bank into a third party that can then...
For a while we were using, I think it was called Bill.com to do this.
Oh, we're
so
not
it's
still
like
using them?
Well, no, because we've moved back to a U.S. bank account because that was giving us problems as well. So we were like wiring money out to Bill.com and then paying people from that separate account. However, if you currently live in Puerto Rico or think about moving here, we have been told that Wells Fargo is now opening up Puerto Rican bank accounts. They don't have a bank here, so if you ever need to go to the bank, it's not going to work. But, very simple things that I used all the time, like the ability to take pictures of checks and deposit them, you cannot do that here. Here's the funniest thing. So the people at the bank say, oh, yeah, the app can do that.
Just take a picture of the check and
deposit the check. And I'm like, great. How do I turn that on? And they're like, you can't turn it on and you can't request it. It's just after so many amount of days with your bank account, they might randomly enable that feature for you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like we're like hundreds of thousands of dollars like we have running through your bank and you can't call and just ask for this feature. I have to stand in line every time I want to deposit a check when you have the technology.
Yeah.
And they're just like, yeah, it's just like maybe it'll show up.
To be fair, though, I had Wells Fargo. I still have Wells Fargo. And as a wedding photographer, I would get large checks for the final wedding payment. And their app would never allow me to deposit more than $5,000.
You're right. So that wouldn't work either.
I still have to go into the Wells Fargo with my clients' checks to deposit them. And recently, like just today, I got a huge refund back. I overpaid my taxes in South Carolina a year or two ago and got a substantial check, but I can't deposit that check into the account that it came from because they don't have a Wells Fargo here. So I just had to deposit it in the local bank, but there was no way for me to remotely
that's a good
this.
point. I don't know how.
So we're complaining about the local bank here, but this still is a problem in other banks in the United States.
It's all such a pain in the butt. I mean, that was never an issue with Bank of America, I don't think. Bank of America would let us deposit everything.
I don't know what the largest check is I did, but my photography business was through Wells Fargo, and I remember being like, I have 4 checks, and I have, it would be like a limit of $5,000 a month too. So maybe one wedding would be smaller, and I could do that one remotely. But then if a second or third check came in,
insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So insane. And then they're charging you a monthly fee as well, and you're like, what?
Just raise the limit. Give me like $20,000 a month that I could deposit or whatever.
I mean, that wouldn't be like you wouldn't be able to cash this one check. It's crazy. But anyway, look into Wells Fargo if you're considering this. And a lot of people that we've talked to are simply have personal local bank accounts where they're, they just kind of hold personal day-to-day money, and they have credit cards linked to that, and then their business account they just have a normal U.S. bank account because it's crazy and it's really difficult to make it work here.
Well, we've definitely dealt with a lot of natural disasters. We've had hurricanes and earthquakes and meteors, and
now
we have like any day now, coronavirus is going to be here. So I don't know that all these are unique to Puerto Rico, but we have experienced quite an eventful year.
Yeah. Now, I think a lot of people, you guys heard about Hurricane Maria, which was a Category 5 hurricane that actually, like the eye, hit this neighborhood on the west coast of Puerto Rico. It was devastating. It was a very serious hurricane.
Tragic situation,
Yeah.
Affected the island probably more than anything since the financial crash.
Yeah.
2008.
And I think a lot of people think, because they heard that Puerto Rico gets hit by hurricanes a lot. But I think statistically speaking, that's not true. We're from Charleston, South Carolina. I think Charleston gets hit with far more hurricanes than Puerto Rico. We get hit with a lot of storms, but they might be tropical storms, and they're not very serious.
And at the most, we're the same as like Florida. Like Miami is probably as big of a risk of hurricanes as where we are in Puerto Rico.
And I would say that for the most part, the homes seem to be built way better here than they are in the States. I mean,
the nicer homes. I
mean,
there's a lot of homes that are not built up to code, and those are the ones that are affected by a big storm. But, I keep thinking my old historic home in Charleston, if that were ever hit by a Category 3 or 4, strong 3, like it could easily be devastating. Whereas this house and most of the homes, they're all built out of concrete. You know? And so they definitely will survive. You may have a window that's broken or some tiles or something like that. But the big storm we had was Dorian, and everyone was, we were really worried about it. And then I think it hit Vieques as a tropical storm, and then it intensified, and everybody knows it just sat on the Bahamas. It's a freak storm that just sat there for several days. But the hurricane season here wasn't really that bad. I would say I was less stressed about hurricanes this last year than I have been in Charleston.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, we're renting here, so
it's not really
we're not as
property,
worried about it. I am always thinking about my house in the States, because my house is up on stilts. If it gets hit by a hurricane, I just feel like it would be blown off of its foundation. But this house has survived a Category 5 with almost no damage. So this house is like a freaking castle or something. There's nothing's blowing this house over. However, we are having the earthquakes here. We had a very serious earthquake.
Are they still going on? Has it been? It's been a while since a strong one, right?
There was a Category 4 point something just the other day, but again, these are happening out in the ocean south of Puerto Rico, and I have not felt them recently. Everybody felt the big one. Was it a Category 5? What number was it?
5 or 6. It was pretty big.
It was a big one, and we recently drove through the towns that were hit most seriously by this, and there is some crazy devastation out there. I mean, some of these buildings, were massive, massive buildings. Just
looks like Sam's or Costco's that are just like crumbled in,
Yeah.
And we'd see, there's a McDonald's. Oh, it's not open, because even though it's not collapsed, there's probably enough structural damage to where you just can't use that building. And when things are built out of concrete, I don't think you can just repair things as easily as you can with wood. Reframe a side of a building, it's like maybe the whole building is compromised, because of the way it's built.
But I was talking with someone here who knows a little bit about building, and he was saying that new concrete construction is supposed to withstand like a Category 7 or so. It was like some crazy number where it's usually total devastation. He said they're meant to move now with the rebar or something that's inside them. So I don't know. But again,
not all the homes in Puerto Rico are built to that standard, probably.
Absolutely not. But I don't think most people in Puerto Rico were that worried about the earthquake. Obviously, it was very centralized.
Right, and I think they've made like FEMA maps, and when you look at it, 5 to 10% of Puerto Rico, maybe like 10% of Puerto Rico is actually affected. So I know when I'd go back to the States, everyone would say, "Oh my gosh, how are you surviving the earthquakes?" And it's like it's really affecting such a small group of people, but because things like power and transformers and energy come from only a few places on the island, one earthquake across the other side of the island can affect the entire island. And speaking of power, how do you feel the power outages have been over the course of a year?
I would say the power goes out a lot. Obviously, that is my opinion. Maybe if you've lived in other places, it doesn't go out a lot.
I don't think I even notice how much the power goes out, because we have so many things on battery packs that you'll hear a click, but the battery will keep everything on. And unless it's at night when you see the lights flicker, like during the day, everything runs on the batteries that I don't always notice that the generators have turned on and that we're now in generator power and not battery or not, regular power.
So we have a generator that will automatically kick on if the power turns off. It seems like, I don't know if I would say the majority of homes in our neighborhood have that, but maybe so.
I think since the hurricane, it's more and more people are installing generators.
And
especially if you're in a high rise, a lot of the condos like in San Juan now have generators to help maybe not give power to every room, but to do a lot of the...
Many of them do. But if you're considering buying or renting, it's a priority for me. Yeah. I mean, we have friends who live in this neighborhood who are in little like sub-neighborhoods that do not allow generators for some unknown reason. And anytime the power goes out, they're always the first to be like, hey, has anybody figured out when it's going to come back on or whatever? Because it's like, if you're trying to get work done or, you
need
want AC or like, your ice. Can you imagine, like, you have an ice maker or whatever, and every time the power goes out, it starts to melt and then it refreezes into a block and you have to, like, chisel it out every single time. I would say a few months ago, it seemed like our power was going out multiple times a week. And I don't think that's been happening recently, but it was happening a bunch. And I always just felt really fortunate. Like, we've got a generator, it doesn't really matter. The problem was for us is that it would take our internet out with it.
Yeah.
And that should not happen. From what I've been told, there should be battery packs on power lines or in junction boxes or something that keep the internet going, because other people in our neighborhood continue to have internet when their power goes out.
It's like our one street.
It's just our street.
Yeah.
So I have called the internet company and I've asked them to
replace the batteries,
make that work. Yeah. And they're like, we will look into it. And then of course they don't.
Yeah.
So that's been a downer. Today,
just general infrastructure. Like today, our internet's been down all day, but it's not because the power's out. It's just something to do with running lines. Like, I never know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But they have cut the internet for some reason, and so here we are, like 8 hours into my day, and I'm like, I don't really know what to do. We can't completely get all the internet we need from tethering to our phones, and I need to upload YouTube videos and stuff. Like, it's kind of put a damper on my day, so I'm just like watching cable TV and hanging around the house.
Yeah, but I would say that internet has been very reliable over the last year, for the most part, other than the power being out. And when I say the power being out, I think one time the power went out maybe for 3 days for us. But again, we didn't really notice other than the internet. But for the most part, the power might go out for like 20 minutes
or something.
Yeah, and then it just comes right back on. So it really hasn't affected us too much. But the internet being out today has been pretty significant. Like, everyone in our neighborhood's like, oh, have you heard anything? When's it coming back? Yeah. I got to get this work done. Like, everybody here works from the internet.
And if you just did emails or something, then you could probably just tether from your phone. But if you have to upload or download large files and do the kind of stuff, it's definitely a hassle.
But in terms of internet speed, when it's been working,
it's really good. I think at times I feel like the internet is as fast or faster and then cheaper than what we were spending in the United States.
I think it's significantly
And the same
faster.
is true with like cell service.
Yeah.
Every time I go back to Charleston or Miami or Atlanta, AT&T is crippling slow. It is so frustrating. And then you come back to Puerto Rico and my AT&T is like faster than it's been in the States.
It's so strange. Like, I feel like in a lot of airports in the United States, my data does not work. Like, I'm trying to send text and it just doesn't send, or I'll try to go to a website and it just doesn't work. And I'm not connected to the Wi-Fi. And then I come back to Puerto Rico and I'm like, oh yeah, this is what it should be like. But even with full service in the United States, it just seems so bogged down with people or something. I don't know what the deal is.
Now, shipping. Have you had to deal with any shipping problems? I know last time we were here, we were talking about Amazon.
We do have Amazon Prime. It does work. It's not necessarily 2 days, but it might be 3 days. It's still really good. But a lot of the heavier things, it's kind of frustrating because they will tell you that it's Prime and they'll ship it to you until you go through the whole process. And then when you hit buy, then they tell you, we're not shipping this to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
I think you had issues with rugs for your bedroom.
Rugs are hard to get, but there's apparently, Amazon pressures a lot of rug sellers to lift the ban on Puerto Rico during the holiday seasons. So from like November to January, you can get rugs prime, and they'll ship these huge things. But then after that holiday season, it's like none of the rugs will ship here. So if you're thinking of moving to Puerto Rico, you got to order your rugs around Christmas time.
Or anything that's really heavy, like TVs and stuff. Yeah. I think that's been a problem for people.
Now, I recently bought this light off of eBay.
That's true.
And this came from India.
Yeah.
And they do DHL. Is that the company?
Yeah.
And it delivered fine. Like, I think it got stuck in customs for a little bit, but then it wound up making it here.
Yeah.
I'm on Humira, which is a refrigerated drug.
Yeah.
They ship that overnight, USPS. I get that drug, no problem here on the island. The biggest thing I think we've had issues with is batteries. Like large batteries or sometimes even camera batteries. I was trying to buy the new GoPro 8 batteries, and it will not ship through Amazon.
Yeah, that's been really, really weird. So we buy a lot of camera gear from B&H and Amazon, and it seems like if you buy a camera with a battery,
it will ship.
They'll ship it to you. But if you just try to buy a battery, they won't ship it to you. And I've tried to buy very small batteries, they won't ship it. And, you know, for normal people, this is not an issue. Just go to Walmart, you get whatever battery you need. But
we need very specialized batteries.
But overall, getting stuff we want hasn't really, I know we've talked a lot about how it has been an issue, but it really hasn't been an issue. I mean, there's Best Buys here, there's furniture stores here, there's Walmart, there's Costco, there's Sam's. So for the most part, we've been able to get everything we want.
Just found a P.F. Chang's. It's 30 minutes from us. I didn't know about this. Apparently you guys have been eating it up the whole time, not telling me.
Keeping a secret.
There's a P.F. Chang's right down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm excited about that. We've started salsa dancing with our significant others. We have like a whole group. How many people do we have there? Like 10? 10 people from our neighborhood.
Yeah, and this class is in Caguas. And how many people you think are in this class?
60?
Oh, I would
80?
guess over 100.
There's a lot of people.
It's like we're like bumping into each other. There's so many people, but yeah, it's fun. So I guess we can talk a little bit about the positive sides of Puerto Rico, and I have just been having an absolute blast down here. I have loved almost every aspect of Puerto Rico, other than like the complaints that we've just talked about. I have loved it, and I've loved the people. I've loved meeting the locals here, and I've loved meeting all of the entrepreneurs who lived here. I love the different cultural aspects. I love the fact that there are things that I'm accustomed to that are from the U.S., you know, like the P.F. Chang's and the Cheesecake Factory. Like Katie and I always love eating at Cheesecake Factory in San Juan because they've got the Impossible Burger, and we're vegetarian. We love that. But then when you want to have the Puerto Rican food and all that interesting stuff, that's everywhere as well. It feels like you're kind of getting to live this foreign island lifestyle with still the comforts of our home when we want it. I'm a member of a local jiu-jitsu gym that's run by a local Puerto Rican that's, you know, mostly Puerto Rican students in this gym. I've gotten to become friends with a lot of them. And then at the same time, in this neighborhood, you know, we play tennis and golf, and I think very soon I need to go and play a basketball game, like a pickup basketball game with a bunch of guys in this neighborhood. There's the kiteboarding here. There's the hopefully boating coming up soon if we can buy this boat.
There's restaurants right on the water, you know, and it's so easy. The other night we just had a WhatsApp group. We just said, hey, anyone want to grab dinner? And next thing I know, we had like 20 friends at some huge table, and it was like 2 hours before dinner.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's very easy to get people together, and then you're out, and then you see all the tourists that are there, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this place is amazing. You guys live here. Like, it's just a cool vibe, you know?
Everyone's more up to just do things and live life, and like, hey, you want to go out tonight and have a 3-hour dinner? Sure. Like, you can ask people with 15 minutes notice, and they go, sure. Or I'm getting invited to do things that were always just so difficult in the States. Everybody just like, oh, I'm tired, I gotta work, I got kids.
I gotta take the kids to this and that. But the thing is, all of those errands and responsibilities are so spread out over the city that it wears you down.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's like, oh, the kids are taking the golf cart to go to tennis. I don't even have to take them there.
Right.
Sure, I can go out and...
Or like, I'm stuck with the kids tonight, but I'll meet you out at dinner with the kids, and while we're eating, the kids are going to play with the other kids at the restaurant by the ocean.
Yeah.
And we'll talk, and, you know, I'll keep an eye on my kids or whatever. But it's just,
Unless
so
you're going to Chuck E. Cheese or
easy.
something, it's very hard to get families together and let their kids do that in the States.
Right, and you know, I in the States, I was always trying to get guys to do jiu-jitsu with me. I thought it was such a cool sport, and I was asking everyone, like, oh, you got to come to jiu-jitsu. I got a couple of people to come once. Here, I think I've gotten 5 guys in my neighborhood to not just go, but to like sign up. They're competing with me. You know, they're buying the gis,
Yeah.
they're coming to the competition. Some of us are flying to different states to compete. When people want to go on vacation, like we've met this couple that they own a house in Breckenridge, and they're like, hey, everybody, who wants to come to our house and
Yeah.
ski? And we're like, yeah, let's go. And it's just people are so much more willing to do things. And like,
Everyone has more of a sense of adventure, you know?
yeah,
Everyone, I feel like, a lot of my friends back in the States wanted to believe they had a sense of adventure.
they love talking about it.
But when it came down to, you know, and I think we're also photographers, and so many of our photographer friends had the schedule where they could do the same things.
Yes.
I work on the weekends, but during the week I'm free, or in the off season, in the winter, if I'm a wedding photographer, I'm flexible to do stuff. But if you weren't a photographer or self-employed, it was very hard to ever, like my family even, it's very hard to get them to go on these trips. But here, everybody's got the same spirit and the same mindset. And I think that's like the most exciting thing about living in Puerto Rico and in this neighborhood.
One of the other things that has been so cool about this neighborhood in particular, and I'm sure it's other areas in Puerto Rico as well, is just the number of entrepreneurs concentrated right here. We've met so many people that are not in our industry at all,
Yeah.
but they still do these businesses that are related to, you know, what we do, in just the sense that they run a business and it's online, whatever. But everybody is so open and willing to help each other, and you know, we've started these masterminds where weekly we have lunch with these guys, and we just talk about our business and what we're struggling with and what we could do better at, or hey,
Yeah.
here's a tip that we found that worked really well for our business, you should try this.
Or it's like we have friends like Pi Jerza who just visited, and I think it's public knowledge now that he's writing a book. We can team him up with somebody in our community who knows exactly the steps to get on the New York Times bestseller list, where in the States, I would be like, I have one friend who's a writer, but I don't know if she knows that game plan, you know?
Right.
And so people can come and visit, and you can tap them into somebody who does something in the same field, which is really cool, where at least in a creative field, if you're self-employed or you're a photographer or something, a lot of my friends and family are like, I don't know that world at all. But that's all of my friends. Where
Yeah.
here, all of my friends are, you know, from all walks of life and do all kinds of cool things. There's something to be more relatable in general.
I feel like I have connected more quickly with people in Puerto Rico than I ever have in my entire life. I feel like I have more friends down here. I have more people that I'm actually excited to not just, you know, be friends with here, but do things outside of the neighborhood and outside of Puerto Rico and outside of the business, whatever it might be. And that has just been so much better than I could have ever imagined. I thought moving to Puerto Rico might be an upgrade in lifestyle. You know, I'd get to live this island lifestyle and everything, but in reality, it's been such a social upgrade. I feel like I've just made so many connections with people, and I feel more connected here than I did back in the States, so that's been a shock to me. Now, I'm sure there's many expenses that have come up that we did not expect, that I'm sure people would like to know about. One thing that we've talked about in detail in other videos has been the power
Yes.
expense.
Power is about 3 times more expensive here than it is in other states.
And our power bill on average is probably around $1,300 to $1,500 per month in this house, which I feel is outrageous. And it, you know, if it would be $500 a month, I would say like, okay, that makes sense, because we only turn the AC on in rooms that we are currently in. So every time I leave this office, I cut the AC off. Our bedroom has the AC off all day until we sleep. The common area of our house, which is an entire floor, we have almost never turned the AC on once. It's just hot up there all the time. We eat outside every day. We never eat inside in air conditioning because it just costs too much. And we really haven't been able to figure out what is costing so much? This is a large house. It's a 5,000 square foot house, and we have to get water. It's 6 stories tall. So we have to get water from the bottom floor up to the 5th floor.
There's like water pumps and circulators
and I don't think the circulator cost money to run. That's a very small little motor, but the fact that it's keeping hot water at every spigot and it's in the walls, that has to cost a lot of money. We also have a hot tub that no one could figure out how to plumb correctly, so it's just running all the time. The pump is literally circulating all the time, and if we cut the pump off, then the water tank overheats, trips the breaker, and then the hot tub goes cold. We have hired a energy specialist, auditor to come over and figure out where our power is going.
He found a $200 bill just with the elevator. If the elevator door isn't shut, it's like constantly on, ready to go or something.
He said that was costing us $250 per month to not use the elevator, but if the door could be closed, but if it wasn't like pushed so the magnets were touching, that was an extra $250 a month. We've made sure to close that door very tight now. He was the nicest guy in the world, and he was doing a great job, and he said he was going to come back in a few days with his wife to finish the job, and he never did, and then he stopped responding to us. We also have a plumbing issue in this house where the very top floor we have a tankless hot water heater, which would make sense, so that we don't have to turn the circulator on. But when we turn the hot water heater on and the tankless on, it sends hot water to both the hot and the cold side, which of course uses outrageous amounts of power, and when we flush the toilets, it's like steamy hot water. So we have had, I believe, 3 plumbers come over and look at this, and all of them have said, we do not want to do this job.
All the plumbing is hidden behind concrete.
Yeah.
You can't just like open up some sheetrock and fix whatever you need.
So it's issues like these that make me very afraid to own a home in Puerto Rico. Because when you hire experts to come over and you're, like, we don't own this house, but the owner was saying, we are willing to pay you to fix this. And they go, nope, we don't want to do it, because they don't know where the problem is. And it's not like sheetrock where you can cut in and look in there and see. This is concrete. Everything is concrete. So it's definitely a completely different mindset here. Kind of like the situation with my car, trying to replace a battery. Like, I'm trying to pay you to do this, and the people just don't really care. It's like you have to really work to give people your money. We tried to buy cars down here before we decided to ship our cars, and the salesmen at the car dealerships didn't know the prices of the used cars on the lot. And I said, that's the truck I want to buy. How much is that truck? And he was like, I'm not sure. And I said, well, then what am I supposed to do? And he was like, you can go on Classificados online and get a basic idea of how much these used cars cost.
That was the strangest experience. And that was at like a massive Toyota dealership.
Yeah, and we thought, okay, like, this guy hates us for some reason. We're going to go to the Nissan dealership next door, talk to the nicest girl salesman, and I'm like, how much is this car? She's like, I don't know.
So strange.
It was the weirdest experience. So that was when we decided to ship our cars down here. Since then, I have seen so many people in our neighborhood and in other neighborhoods selling their cars that I don't think I would recommend shipping your car down here unless you have a car you really love or something, or it's electric. If you ship an electric car down here, you don't have to pay all the crazy taxes. We have a friend down here who shipped a $20,000 Audi. Did you hear this story?
No.
He shipped his girlfriend's $20,000 Audi down here, and you have to pay taxes based on the value of the car. But the value of the car is determined by some program that Puerto Rico has. It's nothing that you can access.
It's not the Kelly Blue Book, though.
No, but it's supposed to be fair and based on that. And he got his tax bill, you have to pay it to get it out of the port or whatever, and it was $38,000.
It was more than the cost of the car?
Yeah, more than the cost of the car.
So he shipped it back?
Yeah, so he was going to ship it back, and they were pressuring him. They were like, you have to decide within 12 hours. Like, if you don't want to pay this, then you're going to have to pay to ship it back, and we have to know now, or you're going to get hit with this bill whether you like it or not. And so he started talking to this local guy, and this local guy guessed that they had plugged it in to their computer as an Audi R8 as by mistake, and which is like Audi's supercar. And this guy, who was a local Puerto Rican, called whoever,
the hacienda,
and said, you better replug this in. And they said, no, we're not replugging it in. We know, like, we already did this correctly. And he said, you better plug it in. And they plugged it in and said, oh, we're sorry. The taxes are like $3,000. So crazy stuff like that can happen. I have just learned to lower my expectations. And I kind of, when crazy things like that happen now, I have started to find it kind of endearing. And I think
You're a better man than I am.
I think I am a better man than you are, but I think
I get incredibly frustrated and lose my mind.
You can get super frustrated, or you can go into the situation. Like when we went to the bank today, I said, are you ready for this?
Hadn't even crossed my mind.
You were like, we're just wiring some money.
I thought we're wiring money. It's going to take 10, 20 minutes.
No, like I go in and I'm like, this is going to take 2 hours.
That's why you always ask me, are you ready to go to whatever it is?
No.
And I'm like, geez.
Like you must mentally prepare
Lee
yourself.
is so ready to do this. It was just a little thing on my day-to-day list. And
no, you have to mentally prepare yourself. And I do the same thing when I go out to dinner. This is going to sound crazy, but it is a joke here that, I mean, what percentage of the time does something go wrong at a meal when you're going? I mean, I would say
at my table or for me personally?
At the table.
At the table, 100%.
100%.
Every time.
The food will take 2 hours to come out. They won't bring you the right food. They will bring you your entree before they bring you your appetizer. They will never refill your drink and you're sitting there for 2.5 hours. They will bring you your bill and it'll have 5 things you didn't order on it. They will bring you someone else's food.
You'll have a reservation and they will give your table away.
That just happened the other night?
When you're there on time. You should have been here 20 minutes ago. And my reservation was at 7.
Yeah.
I got to be here at 6:45. We're going to have to set up another table.
Yeah, like the other night we went out to eat and the waitress apologized and said, hey, we're really busy. It's probably going to take 45 minutes to an hour to get your food. And we were like, no problem. Like, I was like, that's incredible if we can get food in that amount of time. We ordered our food. 1 hour later, she came back to us and told us that much of the food we had ordered was not available anymore.
Yeah.
So they had not even started making our food yet. How long do you think it took to get the food? 2 hours, 2.5 hours?
It was like
to get
2 hours.
You know, you order drinks and they never come. You ask for like the sauce and it never comes. You ask for the hot sauce, it never comes. It's just, if that sort of thing drives you crazy, and it used to me, you know, you'd go to just a standard Chili's restaurant and you'd ask for a refill and they wouldn't do it and you'd be like, what's going on with this person? Why aren't they refilling my drink?
I'm not giving them their tip.
Yeah, here it's like 90% of the time that's what's going to happen, and I think a lot of it is just a cultural thing. It's just not a big deal. Everybody's not in really, you know, there's no hurry, and
We're not thirsty.
They will never bring you your bill. Like, you must find your waiter or waitress and ask them if you can pay.
Yeah.
So you'll be sitting there for an hour.
The best example to illustrate this was the PF Chang's we just had. It's like we order everything like normal, but our soup came out last, but then the entrees came really quick. So it's like you have this huge amount of food, and then your drinks come after the food, and the sushi comes, and then the soup. And by the time the soup comes, you're like, I don't know why I ordered the soup. I'm not going to take the soup home, but I would take the entree home.
And then it's like, you know, they took your order, and then he went to go get your drink before he took my order.
Yeah,
when we're sitting right next to you. Like, it's the weirdest, strangest stuff. And if you let that stuff get to you and it makes you angry, then
you have no hope.
You have no hope. But I have completely changed my outlook, and I just find everything kind of like cute and funny now. And when I go and I order food and it takes an hour and a half and I ask for my drink and it never comes, I'm just like, like, this is home.
Where it gets me is scheduling. if you have friends that come in and you have to pick somebody up, or you want to do dinner but still get back at a reasonable time,
You just can't.
or you want to do dinner and a movie,
You just can't do that.
scheduling stuff like that is really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Because there's a great, like, I'm very good in the States of being like, I can do this in 30 minutes or an hour.
Yeah.
And we can do all these other things. We're going to miss rush hour or whatever it is. You just can't do that here. You have to be prepared to do one activity at night.
Yeah, and I mean, the other maybe a few weeks ago, Katie, I took my wife to the doctor, and I think we waited 4 hours to see the doctor, and they just acted like it was normal, and my buddy Isaac, he
Oh gosh.
like hurt his wrist or something, and he showed up at the doctor because he had been there before, and they don't really do reservations or appointments with the doctor. They just do like day reservations, and they may give you a time, but that's not the time the doctor will see you.
This is just the time you should be there.
Yeah, and Isaac waited 7 hours to see the doctor.
Didn't he say that, like, he just left and did shopping and then came back?
And still waited another 5 hours or something. And we have another friend whose son broke his arm very seriously, drove to San Juan because the doctor said, you needed to be there at 7 a.m. I think he said he waited for 8 or 9 hours. And then when he finally saw the doctor, he asked the doctor what he should do next time because he cannot wait 9 hours to see the doctor. And the doctor said, "Oh, just tell my front desk lady, to schedule towards the end of the day because I don't even come in until 1." And he said, "Well, then why did she tell me I had to be here at 7?" And he said, "Oh, we tell everyone they have to be here at 7." Like, I've never heard of anything like that in my entire life. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. I don't understand why
you would even
the
want people there.
doctors would want that.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any
The
sense to
receptionists,
me.
they have to constantly answer to people that are questioning, why am I here?
Right. And, I would just think if the doctor was behind or whatever, like, hey, just tell people, hey, we're really sorry. We're 3 hours behind, but if you guys want to go shop or work or do whatever, you can come back in 3 hours. And I'd go, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But no, they just want you to sit there all day and they'll never warn you or tell you. So it's just a totally different cultural thing. And if that sort of thing drives you crazy, then you're going to be driven crazy a lot. But if you can just have like a positive attitude and realize that those are some negative things that could drive you crazy, but you're get
living
all
in paradise
of these
and
positive things. And for so many people, our lives are so much more
simple and
less stressful.
Yep.
There's just not that much to stress about at all. Like, nobody here watches the news or talks about politics or anything. Like, everybody's just talking about like family and friends and fun and want to do this and let's go get dinner and oh, what do you do? Oh, you're doing a dance class? I want to go.
Until you have to throw your governor out, and then the whole island comes together and we all march.
Well, that's what I think. If I could, sum everything down into one thing, I think I love Puerto Rico for the community. I think everyone here has so much better community than we have in the States. In the States, I didn't even know my neighbors. It's so much more family-oriented, friend-oriented, and for me, that has been a huge breath of fresh air.
I mean, we've covered pretty much everything. Perhaps if you have questions, maybe we could make another one of these in like a month or two that's a little more focused. And if you have questions, you could leave them in the comments below and we could maybe have something to where it's a little more concise.
Well, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, leave your questions below. And especially if you've lasted to the end of this video, I'm sure you actually are really interested. Leave your questions below and we will answer them in another video. If we get enough questions, I guess. That's a good idea. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.
It's a perfect time to get out of here and go do an activity.
I got to go play basketball.
Yeah.
Let's do it.